welcome back to Breaking Waves. On today's show, we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Saui'a Louise Mataia Milo. How are you this afternoon?
Good afternoon. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who also don't know, Dr. Saui'a is also the Dean for NUS for the Faculty of Arts. So this is a very exciting episode because we're going to get to know a lot about Samoa's history and our rich cultural context.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. You wrote a PhD called There Are No Commoners in Samoa, The Children of Indigenous Women and US Servicemen During World War II.
Can I make a correction on
Yes,
that
yes,
one?
yes.
Okay. That was a chapter of a book that I was in. But the my PhD is called Subtle Invasions, the wartime experiences of Samoan women in Samoa during the Second World War.
Amazing,
Yes.
amazing. Thank you for correcting me on that. So it's a very interesting topic. A lot of youth are very curious about what Samoa looked like during those times. And there's a lot of stories being told, passed on from our own grandparents and our great-grandparents. So my first question is, could you please give us a bit of historical context as to why the US Marines were occupying Samoa at that time?
Okay, yes, I will. There's a couple of things we need to know first. In the 1940s, none of our Pacific Islands were independent nations. They did not have that sovereignty, although the Samoans were seen to be pushing for that at that time. And then the war disrupted any political movement on the ground. How this Americans arrived there, it was the American Samoa have always had that, it was annexed by the Navy. And then they took control of American Samoa. We all know that the Samoa Islands, the archipelago at the time, is one whole set of islands, but two colonial administrators. The Western Islands were under the rule of New Zealand, administering a sea mandate for the League of Nations at the time. And the Eastern Islands was under the Navy jurisdiction. They were administering it for for the American government. Now, when war happened out in Europe, nobody really bothered in Samoa or in the Americas to look at the Pacific, although so many years before there were ghost watchers. There were also geopolitical watching and maneuvering by China and by Japan. But on that December morning when the Japanese Air Force bombed Pearl Harbor, all of a sudden the war became very close to home. Right. And the first contingency troops that were released by the American government at that time, after it declared war against Japan, went straight to American Samoa because it's their territory. And with that, once it came that, and then there's also the allies, of course, the allied nations, New Zealand, Australia, and both part of that history, decided to, in what we found after looking at the classified files at the time, not so classified now, is that the New Zealand government at the time decided to just, keep a low profile and let the U.S. Pacific Command take over. So when the war, it was something totally different now, beyond New Zealand's control and beyond the Navy's control. And that's how the U.S. forces came to be accommodated in Samoa and around the Pacific. The battle lines were already drawn, and it was going to be fought mainly in the east, the west, where you have the Solomon Islands, Midway Islands, where you had the Battle of the Midway Islands, where that ended a lot of Japanese thoughts about being a naval power in Samoa, because it was totally destroyed by the Americans. And then for us, the Cook Islands or all the other islands who were far behind the line of battle, including Fiji, us, Samoa, we were forwarding bases where they to come to from the battle or to get ready to go to battle. That was the sort of makeup at the time. The problem when they arrived to Samoa is that their premises were not ready, and so all the soldiers had to be billeted out to the villages. And you see, and if you look at some of those World War II photos in American Samoa, that's how they came to be, to develop relationships with Samoan families, with Samoan youth during the war, because that missing part, the premises for them, their bunks, their bunkers, the accommodations for them, the military style accommodation weren't ready, and so went out to the villages.
That's so buzzy that I'm thinking about it, because that means hospitality must have been, we recognize Samoan hospitality, but it would have been different depending on what village they were in. So above everything happening, World War II, these Marines coming in, many of them did have intimate relationships with the women of Samoa. Through your research, what did that look like during that time?
Well, there's a couple of things that have happened there, and that is where my interest lied there, because when you look and when you ask people what the Samoan women did at that time, a lot of people didn't really say, they had a good time or they had a bad time. The first thing they point out is there was some loose morals, and then because it was difficult to control young people at the time when there were so many other young people with different values too. So you have these Samoans and different kinds of Samoans too, the Samoan, indigenous Samoans, and you also have a different population also of, I don't call them half-castes, but of mixed blood. They had the social network, they had the social buy-in, the social capital, to say, to access everyone at that time. When the Americans came and befriended them, all of a sudden you find that, the old Samoan family now has access to many things that they were unable to access before. And so there were different kinds of social activities too with young people. But in terms of relationships, we have to be very careful there when we talk about relationships, because when we did the research, and I would like to credit also Professor Emeritus Professor Judy Bennett and Professor Angela Wanhala of Otago University, who had the trust in me to write at that time. I was quite a new researcher when I wrote that, and I did that part to actually analyze that there are different kinds of relationships there, that if you look at our people, they romanticize things. He's gone to the war. He's gone to the war, like this hero.
Yes.
Yeah, paint this hero. But for me, when you did the field work and you had a look at some of the things that these women went through,
right,
it was not romantic at all.
Right.
There has been there are records of. I found a rape case.
Could I just interrupt you for that first part?
Yes.
Do you think the romanticizing of that idea had a lot to do with kind of like the movies that were being released at the time, or like what they were seeing in books and films?
There's always these sort of things here that the way movies came to Samoa and the history of cinema in Samoa is not, they were not censored in Samoa. They were censored outside of Samoa. Usually in Fiji or down in Wellington. There are so many archives that refer to this, because it's always that kind of thing, that there's always this war hero.
Yes.
A couple of war heroes going.
Yeah.
So yes, it's always that's because you are fed that kind of information.
Right.
That this is how war heroes play it out.
Yeah.
But never. And because there's the politics behind there too, let them show. Because one of the things that it ties back to the mandate, the sea mandate, you're not allowed. One of the rules of that engagement is that you're not allowed to raise any army in Samoa. And so there's always this idea to keep people regulated. Show them these sort of movies. Give them this sort of thinking. And so when these sort of social activities come and things happen, you would frame it like that.
Right.
Like this, anything happens, there's this child here, he's gone away, he's a war hero. And that really affected the way our society, and that's why this is called subtle invasion.
Right.
You've been invaded without knowing.
Yes.
Not through the guns, but through culture in these sort of things. So those sort of experiences I called at that time that we need to relook at, because how do you romanticize rape?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the realities you
so
dive
it's
into.
it is that sort of conditioning, and it's coerced violence in a way. So that sort of those sort of things. Because come to think of it, if I find one rape and I have found a couple of materials that led to even our clergy were involved in that sort of how do the youth say, pimping it out.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah, and I do not hide the fact that, you've got to own up to these sort of things. People were making money. It was at a time where there was a lot of cash. And people were making money left, right, and center, and to please a physical need. All these things happen during the war. And yes, there are regulations, but we never knew about it until we had participants speak about it. And when they spoke about it, they were at the tender age of the 90s, 80s, those sort of things. So the reality was totally different, not romantic.
Right.
But having said that, there were also many other different relationships that were ensued, which ended up in marriage because at that time, the War Department in in New York or wherever it was, were quick to make the ruling that you're not allowed to marry any native where you are stationed, where you are sent to.
Was there a political reasoning behind that?
Well, there's a couple of political reasons for it, and it's not just for Samoa. It's the same thing applied to all the servicemen around the world at that time. And it was very strict during World War II, because they found that, you find these young men, some of them were very underage too. And our participants were talking about having to comfort them, homesick, far away from home. So all the youth problems that we feel today, that our youth felt when they leave home, even these soldiers had to, felt that. And so it was our women who reached out as mums, adopted some of these young fellas and treated them well, and took them under their wing, and families too, because they did the laundry for them, and that's how the cash came to them. They paid the families or the women to be to wash their clothes.
Right. So there was a lot of money, right? So pop culture must have been booming as well, I'm assuming. And I have a question. This is more on a rumored, so this is a personal opinion question. You talk about, the clergies and how they were involved in pimping out women. Was that a thriving industry in Samoa? Was like a prostitution? Is that what we call it? Yeah.
Well, prostitution is the oldest occupation since the beginning of time. But there were many different ways of how that was. It was not open, but there have always been assumptions. So when people talked about prostitution at the time, it was always an assumption that there are something hidden that people don't talk about because of the stigma that goes with it, and the fear of having a baby out of wedlock, and the fear of women being made to feel fear, the Samoa at that time. But I don't, and there were coerced sexual activity that much. My data tells me about it, and how some clergy members were they were barred from it by the church rules, and but in terms of thinking about it as an open house, no,
it wasn't advertised that way, at least at that time.
It was not. It was something that was kept hush.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's so interesting. And what else was like, we're talking about money, so there were those industries that were kept hidden. I'm guessing because there's a lot of tapu around it. And what were some of the other things that were in pop culture at that time? Well,
there's a lot of what one has to think about before the arrival of the American Marines in American Samoa. There's always this American culture that's already there since 1900. In Western Samoa, it was more English, more New Zealander kind of dosage of Western popular culture, with the movies, the songs that were there, the reading material that was there for leisure. A lot of the people who talked about that was just with Mills and Boons, the reading material that was available, and the chocolate that was available, Baby Ruth, and how some of the lollies the candies, they call it.
Yes.
It introduced the word candies to the young kids.
Right.
And even the word cookie. The word cookie was something very foreign to our language. The cookie itself, because before it's referred to biscuits,
right,
because it's
right.
very English.
Yes.
To the Western side.
So that was being introduced as well.
Yeah, because it affected our language as well, and the popular culture language, the songs, and also with the movies as well, because there's always this Dorothy Lamour with the silver screen. But it's always the romantic movies and all that sort of thing. It was the first time also that you see the cinema in the villages. Out in the villages, there are quite a lot of talks about how in American Samoa, the Mount of Zion, the Siona, the yard in front of the church was actually where they had the army movies being put up, and everyone, the whole village came to it. And the young people who now have access to 3 very yummy yet deadly ingredients at that time, they came in boatloads of it because it was needed at the time by the soldiers. Rice,
yeah,
sugar, and flour. Before the war, the Second World War, rice, sugar, and flour were only accessed by people in town and people out, not out where we are out in Saui'a and all that. They remained. The pop food was popoesi and all those sort of things but because flour and rice and sugar was in the feasibility military reports that they need those 3 ingredients to prop up a wartime population diet, because taro these soldiers don't eat taro. It's foreign to them, but they can eat rice and potato if the shipment come. And so these 3 things came into the country. And I can quote one of our past saying, they came in boatloads of them.
Wow,
yeah. And you look at where we are now with the NCDs, with diabetes and that. And one of the changing points of our history in our diet was during this time. With those 3 ingredients, you get magnificent gobais and cocoa rice, rice pudding, and our people started to blend our ingredients with these ingredients, with these 3 massive ones, and where they disperse them, it was at the cinemas. Was at these makeshift silver screen. And so, and that, it was nice. You get a bliss from it. But not knowing that it was going to kill you. It's going to create so many different problems for us. And you begin to see, like in the 60s, consumed in the 1940s, in the 50s and 60s, you start to get the feeling of getting those the bad side of this, because we become affected by it. But we keep looking at where our people started to suffer from this. But this is one of those points.
Right, we're in today.
So with the pop culture, and they enjoyed music, and when the war arrived, they had the soldiers where they were camping. They had, of course, by default, the War Department set them up for to be entertained properly, and that's why you have you heard of Bob Hope? I know it's an American superstar that, together with many different superstars, Hollywood stars, they would travel around the where the camps were and entertained. And in Samoa, they had in Samoa, where you now have the airport.
Right.
At Satapuala and Faleolo, they used to have a nightclub called the Pearl of the Pacific. It was named by the soldiers, and that was for their entertainment. And what they paid is that to have dance groups from around the villages to come and entertain there. And so you have many different young people put together their dance groups and to come and have that entertainment, because like everyone else, you get paid for it. So right. That was a nice way of socializing with the military, with the soldiers. And the officers were usually at other waterholes in town, to use that kind of slang, sort of colloquial kind of way. And they were other establishments in town, and one of them is Aggie Gray's Motel, which became very famous, as we all know.
Yeah. A lot of rumors about Aggie Gray's, but we'll keep the rumors to the rumors.
Well, a lot of rumors, but Aggie is arrested, and we'd like to leave it there.
Absolutely.
But, acknowledging also that woman, I mean, an icon of Samoan tourism. And this is where women, she's one of those women who had to navigate her way through such a tumultuous time. And I take my hat out to all those women, even the women who went through hardships because of the stigma and the decisions they made to have those babies. And but society, with the backlash, we were unable to support them at that time.
That's what I wanted to get into.
Yeah,
like they had this boom of children that came with the soldiers coming in. How were they treated by Samoan society?
Well, I must say that our society owes these women an apology, because a lot of them went through a terrible time in their life. One is the women who had children outside of marriage. There's always this it's like a sentencing to them, especially when someone is not Samoan, and the person who come and then go, who cannot fulfill the Samoa way of having the father side there. And then the backlash is laid on to the children of these American Marines. Not all children of American Marines suffered. Some were taken care of, but the ones who suffered the most and who felt neglected all their lives, the one whose mums also were had to deal with trauma with the family and being disowned. I feel that that is where one part of the thesis came in, is looking at how women versus the church, because you would always depend. Right now, looking back, you would wonder, how did the church reach out to support these women? But I couldn't find, and even our the women that that I interviewed, they shake their heads when they said that they got nothing from the church. But I suppose that was of the time. But having done the research and having lived through and looking at what we know now of gender and inclusion, I really feel that we as a society really do owe those women and those children an apology for one, failing to acknowledge, two, for not ignorance, but we made our choices at the time because of the parameters were different, the social values were different. It seemed so far beyond to reach out. But I find that within those families, there's always one or two characters there who became the go-to person for this young person growing up. And that was the lifeline that they needed most. And some of them have that incident, that growing up and having to deal with your identity and having the cruelty of some of our people and some of our families. I mean, we all have family people who have family members who just don't filter it properly.
Absolutely. Do you feel
but it has shaped their lives. But there are some who have managed, and the good thing is I've seen the products of them. They have become leaders of our country and have done wonders for Samoa and their families. So I acknowledge them and thank them, and but that those women, I mean, they were looked at incorrectly. They should have been held. But that was the time when there was us and the church far removed from from everyday living. Yeah.
Do you feel it was more cultural barriers or religious barriers to why they received that type of treatment?
If you look at the way my participants lived, the family, it was more religious barrier rather than social barrier, because the family absorbs them all, and that is why I wrote that there are no commoners in Samoa. Everyone's genealogy is accepted by the family, and it is important also that that needs to be clear, because it's the natural thing of the genealogy to take care of itself. There's a reaching out to these young people at a time where they were questioning their identity, and it becomes, some have passed on with all those questions, and there have been some people who have went on a quest to try and find their American fathers. Some who have found their fathers, some who have decided just to give up the quest and start with them. And those are the gems that I feel are very important. If it doesn't, you can create a new start socially. But it's the family that reached out. In Olifat Samoa, and the culture that I saw was the one, in my analysis, it was the culture that reached out to them, not religion. That was very clear at that time. But, the world has changed. Samoa has changed. We have learned new things. We've seen new lenses being introduced, and the way our thinking has changed because of new education also. And we have become a lot more accepting. The church has owned up also to some of the iniquities that, but it is that it's for us. Now imagine how when we're talking about pop culture, it has a tail and a lineage that goes right back to religion and all those other things.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as you're in your research, you got to speak to these Samoans who had these experiences, and the trauma that they had to deal with. What were some of the pillars that they had in common that really helped them in their journey to discovering themselves?
Yes, some of the pillars. One is their mums. I think it was the women who tried to protect them from all the nasty that was going on. And the other thing is the grandfathers. The grandfathers, I find it was the grandfathers and who helped them a lot in giving them. And we see them also in our families, how the grandfathers would reach out to some of the children that were born out of these kinds of conflict. The other thing is that I notice is the partners they have chosen. They're always very supportive of them. And what they have said, one of them, is that it really made them think twice in choosing a partner. So that was a lesson learned, a lifetime lesson in finding a partner. They don't want to end up the way their mum ended up. But then another story is the how their mum's new husband was very accepting of them. And so it's the family. It takes a lot of courage to be out there on your own and know you will always have your family. Or not the whole family. Some people will always have your back there. But in finding a new partner that's supportive and accepting of you, because you come with a child, and that is the package. And some partners have accepted them as they were, and that was, I think, was the most important thing for them, is that the child has to be accepted. That's part of the thing. And we see that happen in today's society as well. But I'm talking about in the 1940s, where, the idea of being a virgin and being married, then children, was so drilled into the psyche of a young Pacific woman.
I think today it still happens. Like that's
it's
shame
still
around
does.
Unmarried woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that we make our choices.
Yeah.
That's very important. If you make your choice, and if something else happens that has resulted to these sort of things, it's the woman, your body, your autonomy. So you make that decision for yourself, and you have to be strong too, and be courageous, or to stand by the decision that you have made. And not be silly also. You have to have some substance in your decision making. If you are a youth at the moment, you will become an adult tomorrow.
Yes.
So you need to look towards the future. I've had been teaching for quite a long a time now, more than half of my life now. And you see similar kind of behavior also. But I always say to I've had young students who have had children. I mean, I don't mind that. I mean, that's your decision. And when they come to me and I said, well, I congratulate you for being very brave, but there's no going back. This is it. And sharpen the pencil. And move forward with your life and make something out of it. So nothing is new under the sun.
Yes.
It's just our reaction to it based on what sort of information that we are informed with. But I tell you, in the Second World War, our young women were not informed properly about their bodies, because even today, it's always in the euphemism. It's always in the hush-hush. And that's why le pao le mele le waluma was very important. Awaluma, not komiki. I don't like the word komiki because it's not traditional. It only existed in 1921 when the primary care came. But the powers of the Waluma existed, and they were quite a force to be reckoned with at that time. One, because it was for decision making. It teaches you the skills of how to be a decision maker as a young woman. It teaches you also the language of diplomacy and how to deal with social diplomacy, with socialization, on what to do and how to avoid stigma and all those sort of things. Now, in saying that, I do not discredit the teachings of the church too, because you do get a different kind of skill there. The skill sets where a lot of our women went to school, learn how to bake, which is a very European thing, but you get an extra skill. Read and write, those sort of things that emerge. The successful young women at the time were people who were able to merge, to blend the Samoa and the new Western knowledge that came. And that's how resilient they were, is using all that knowledge, a bank, to move themselves, to navigate through the war. A lot of our women ran businesses at that time. Records in the archives of a businesswoman in Mangia running a restaurant.
Love that.
Yeah, for that. And if you look at the will of some of the women that lived beyond that, I find in the archives, they were running big businesses at the time of the war, not just in the entertainment industry, but also in the food industry, and the menus they were serving at that time. It's quite different from what the boys had. And yeah, so those are the sort of things that I had a look at. And then I think I can bring that experience and how did I get that information? I think one of the things as researchers that allowed for me to get all that rich data, it's through the method. The research method is very important, and I'm sure all the other scholars can agree to it, because I would not have gotten that if I had not chosen to go out and hunt and look for these women and run an oral history project, because you get their voices, you get to see them say those things. And once they're gone, that door is closed. And so I was blessed enough to capture those voices at a time when I ran the data collection and managed to analyze and what they meant for them at the time, what it meant for them when they were young, because seeing these soldiers and seeing what they were doing and how they befriended, socialized with them.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's so interesting, the way that you've explored what happened during that time. And so I wanted to go into another thing, is World War III, a potential World War III. And, you've researched the risks and the impacts of World War II. In your opinion, just briefly, nothing solid, if World War III was to happen, what would some of the things Samoa need to look out for the cultural security of its people?
Wow, that's a difficult one to handle. Well, first and foremost, I am not a prophet. I do not predict these sort of things. I did not get calling from the Holy Spirit. But this much I can give you. The way geopolitics is at the moment is as young people, you need to pay attention to geopolitics and pay attention to what our government is saying, what the Samoa government is saying, because we're talking about trade today. We're talking about resilience. We're talking about climate change and all those things. Politics tie into all those. And these forces would bring about, would shift, they're the shifting, the moving pieces of the puzzle, so to say, and the way things are at the moment. And if you're looking at the region, for me, I look at the regionalism and the way that architect is happening and whether we are safe politically or not. Some students are calling that, but we're caught up in all sorts of trade agreements and all sorts of treaties and pacts and all those things through trade. We need to be careful with that also. And if we have our strategies right, we do have we all have a part to play. But the first thing is take care of our internal politics first. Then we look out into the region, and but do not take your eyes off from what is going on around the world, because what may be happening in the Middle East is affecting our policies at the moment. And then you read into it and see how we can weave our way through it, navigate our way through it into a future that is secure, and that we have human security. We also need to look at food security, and there's also a couple of other things. And with the green and blue economy to harvest, those are the things that we need to look at. For some of us, saying that there might be World War III coming, maybe yes, maybe no. But where we are at this space and time, we need to first take care of ourselves and look after ourselves and our family and the mental mindset as well, and to stay positive. I do not want to portray a future that is bleak. but it really is something that we need to have always at the back of our minds. To prepare for the worst. I think in thinking about that, you would have someone who be proactive. If ever there is a lesson today for me, I would say to be proactive thinkers.
I love that.
Yeah, you think about the future. And not to be too casual about what we say. We must always try and consider what we say, because World War III might be a combat zone here in the Pacific, because it seems like everyone's interested at the moment to have a piece of the Pacific, and that is what I'm looking at from NUS as well, is how everyone is wanting to have
interesting
to engage with the Pacific. I need not say more.
I've been seeing that too, but thank you so much, Dr. Saui'a Louise Mataia Milo, for coming onto our show and sharing with us the knowledge that you found through your study and your research. We really appreciate it so much. And we look forward to having more interviews. And also to, I know you're connected to a lot of doctors as well who have amazing research about the Pacific, Samoa. So I wish you well on your work that you continuously strive to do and work hard for in Samoa. But thank you so much for coming onto our show and sharing that with us. Do you have any last words?
No, I do not have any last words. No famous words. But I just like to just say thank you very much for having me, and I am very happy to be here and to share with you what I have found. And I know not many people, the idea of research is that people react to it many different ways. That we've had people who responded negatively about the research of why we have to dig up the past. But it's important to change the narrative. Is very important, and to show that our women suffered at that time too, and that was hidden, and it's important to have those voices come through our history, and to help inform us of the decisions that we're going to make and moving forward. So today I'd just like to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to express those views. But God bless.
God bless. That's I love you.